Good morning. I couldn't possibly comment there, madam. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're okay. Hi, David. Good morning. Hi, Ian. Good morning to you both. Hope you're okay. All right. Good morning, Michael. Hope you're okay. Good morning, everybody. If you're just tuning in, it's 3 minutes past 10. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Any questions, just type them in for me. I'm going to cover a bit of what I talked about last time, but in a very different way today, using different reference points and also using the computer, the analysis from the TrackMan data here. The data is just fantastic. It's so crystal clear, and it gives us every chance to understand ball flight and how we optimize ball flight and what the biggest ball flight loss indicators are, really. How we lose power in a swing. And hope. Alrighty. Good morning, George. Hope you're okay. Thanks for coming in. Good morning, Ian. Nice to see you. Okay, 4 minutes past. I'll give it one more minute and then we'll go. Alrighty. Well, a jolly good morning to everybody. Thanks for tuning in. So we're working inside today because I want to work very much on the data of bad strikes. I'm going to talk very much about the swing positions. I've got some more fresh reference points for you today to work on and to look at. The message remains the same. How do we optimize your swing as we get older? How do we get the body to move and cheat a little bit? There are lots of orthodox positions in a golf swing. Let's tilt this down a bit. That many of the world's top players get into when they're in their prime of their careers, when they're swinging, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. They're in their mid-20s or mid-30s, whatever, and they're swinging at their prime. Many of the pros do get injured, though, and that's why they tend to have shorter spells of playing now. They might do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and the season is geared around that for injury prevention. So I want you to think of one thing today, and it's how we shut the door. If my arm here represents the door hinges, my forearm here, my hand represents the door itself. We're trying to slam that door shut. There's the door frame. Those are the hinges. We're trying to get the door to slam in shut. The more we do that, the more we optimize everything in a golf swing. Oblique is weak. Oblique is under, over, open, or closed, or too closed or too open. So if we get something close to a smack at the back of the ball like that, we optimize the flight. Now, what we know through TrackMan research is that the more we smack the club squarely in the back of the ball, of course, the ball will fly further, straighter, I beg your pardon, but it flies a lot further as well because we're getting the optimum amount of power in the club head squarely struck into the back of the ball. So per yard travelled, the longest hitters had the tightest dispersion of the ball left and right. Now that's quite counterintuitive. We've always thought in the past, well, I'll swing nice and easy, just try and pop it down the middle. It doesn't work like that. The better you optimize that smack in the back of the ball, the further the ball travels and also on less dispersion left and right. Now, what we have to do as you age is corrupt the swing to achieve those same positions. As your body changes, as you develop injuries or you get less use in the body, then we have to work on positions in the swing which will enable you to cheat that a little bit and get it back. Now, what I want you to do first of all is I want you to do some warm-up exercises for me. So if you can all just get yourselves down there, just give yourself a good old hamstring stretch. I did mine a couple of minutes ago before the session started. Now, this is Gary Player, a supreme athlete. There he is. He's 80 years of age now. And he's always showing off and telling everybody how fit he is because he is so fit, a dedicated supreme athlete. And what he's done all his life, long before they had the science for it, what he's done all his life is dedicated himself to understanding and studying how best to move the body, how best to feed the body, how best to treat the body and rest the body to optimize everything he does. He was way ahead of his time. He's always into the diet, the exercise, the training, and what have you. And of course, of all the top players, he optimized everything he had more than anybody else. He didn't have much natural talent. He came from quite a poor background. And of course, he lived in South Africa when all the major tournaments were played in the States and in the UK. And so he would have to fly and stop off at various stopping points before he could reach the States. And the States wasn't particularly welcome then. If you look at stuff like the Open Championship, it means the Open Championship's open to all. But they used to have things called the Closed Championships, so the English Closed, the Scottish Closed Championship. And naturally, that was just closed to people they wanted to keep within their circle, i.e. Scottish professionals, English professionals. And America had a very strong system there of ensuring that the American pros earned the money. So when Bobby Locke went over there, again, he found it tough. Peter Thompson found it tough, as from Australia, and Gary Player. But Gary Player was so tenacious, there was no way anybody was going to stop him, a complete force of nature. And that bled through into everything that he did and the way he swung. So in his prime, Gary Player had a very, very long swing. It's quite a blurry picture, that. But you should just be able to see the shaft of the club just here. And that's running about 25 degrees beyond the horizontal. So in his prime, Gary Player stood very wide with his stance. He made the biggest rotation he could around here. And as a result of that, that club really went beyond the horizontal. A very long swinger of the club. And he worked all this out on his own. Didn't take many lessons, would pick people's brains, certainly. And then his body would get into these very contorted positions, because he was lunging everything at the ball. Because he knew that as a shorter guy, as a smaller guy, he had to get the power in his swing. And look at that, for a back crunching position there. It makes you wince, doesn't it, when you look at that? And so what he was doing there as a young man, as a young athlete, was he would sleep on the floor of the aeroplanes to get to the tournaments. He'd work as hard as possible. He'd avoid any form of negative food or drink. But what he was doing was throwing his body into a set of positions which optimized what he thought as much power as possible. The modern pros will never get themselves in that position there, but with the old ball and the old clubs, that's how he thought best to do it. So if we look at Player's swing a little later, it became a hell of a lot shorter. So you can see that if I zoom in a little bit there on his current swing, that's more or less the top of his swing now. So Father Time even catches up with him. Now, you look at him when he was a young man, you can see the club's gone a lot further over his shoulder. So his swing is naturally short. He can't help that. But if you look closely, you should see quite an interesting thing there with his feet. They're not level. They're not pointing at the target, inverted commas. He has definitely pulled his right foot back to create space for the left foot. So this gets us into the first thing when I talk about shutting the door. If I withdraw my right side of my body this way, I've already more or less shut the door, haven't I? Because I've created this blockage here, and that's exactly what I want you to think about, creating something which slams in to impact. We're not going to look at making a really big elongated follow-through. Why complicate it? Let's get your backswing with all the power and get that door shutting. If I do the opposite and withdraw myself over here, I've got to come an awfully long way around before I close the door, because I've already put the door in the wrong place. And of course, the target isn't over there. So if we withdraw that right foot, it does lots of good benefits in the golf swing. It brings lots of good benefits, I beg your pardon. It already, I just get my... If I put this rod into my belt loops here, if I face the ball here, my body is neutral and parallel to the ball. If I withdraw my right foot now, I've already created, hope you can see that, that's not great. All right, so as I face the golf ball here, my body's in this neutral position. As I withdraw this right foot, now you can see I've already created some body turn, some body range or movement. I don't say the body turns anymore. I say we put our right side behind us to create power. If the right side of the body goes behind us, then we get the effect of turning the body. So as I set myself up here, if I withdraw that right foot, I've already put 20 degrees of body movement in anyway, which is fantastic. So what I'm doing there, like Gary Player is showing us, and again, morning Donald, nice to see you. We should always go to the best source of information. If the world's top players, Gary Player is one of the world's top 5 players of all time, if he's pulling his right foot back, there's a massive reason for it. And what he's trying to do there, he's trying to emulate what he did as a young man. Let me see. As a young man, in the prime of his fitness, you can see lots of activity in the legs. And how do we measure activity in the legs? Well, the gap between the knees is the big giveaway. And what he's doing in his later years here is creating an even bigger gap than he did when he was young. He still created a gap when he was young. So working from the ground up, what Player is doing there is withdrawing his right foot, and that's creating activity in his legs. Now, I've said this before in some of the lessons I've put out on the club recorder. If you can walk to a golf lesson, you can improve how you swing the golf club, because if you can move your legs with activity, boy, oh boy, does that set activity up with the upper body. Because if my lower body is active, my upper body, my trunk, can't help but get into position. So it all starts from the ground up. And again, this is Jack Nicklaus's famous phrase, build your swing from the ground up. So what I'm asking you to do now as senior golfers is to ignore where the ball's going to go to start off with. We're going to come back to that shortly. But the big movement is right foot back. That instantly opens the body up to start turning. So after we've done that, we're trying to get to that shutting the door position. So what we're trying to do then is get the club face to return into the back of the ball from here. So your thought once you've done that is, well, hang on a minute. I think I'm aiming right at target here. And if you're aiming right at target, you've got to do something about that. And that means you've got to shut the door and slam it shut. So by the time the golf ball is struck by the club head, everything's pointing on target. The golf ball doesn't care if your feet point right of target, left of target, unless it has some effect on the ball. Now, the big effect of closing the stance, withdrawing the right foot, has to be negated now by your intention to smack that face in close at the back of the ball. And I assure you, this exercise of clapping here multiplies your feeling of the golf swing. The golf swing should come from this angle here into the back of the ball. Okay, so we're going to start looking at TrackMan now. What I'm going to do first of all is I want to hit a shot I'm going to try and hit the ball with a perfectly square club face. Or certainly square enough, within 1 or 2 degrees. Didn't quite catch that. All right, might give it one more go. Okay. So what I did there. Hi, Brian. Good morning to you. What I did there was I swung at 84.7 miles an hour, and I closed the club face by 3.1 degrees. Now, if I close a club face when it hits the ball, that will send the ball left. And we can see there that I've hit that ball left of target because that's the straight line there. Hit it left. And my side toe hit that 39 foot left of target. Now, 39 foot left of target, was that 13 yards? That's left of the bunker on, it's probably in the left-hand bunker of most holes, okay? So, if I were to aim right of target and hit that same shot, would I still achieve the same result? No, because if I'm aiming right of target now, I will close the face, but of course the ball is going to bend back to target. Now, here's the interesting part. On my computer here, this screen here, this is called the optimizer. And what it's saying is for every mile an hour stroke, there's a certain yardage achievable. On this shot here, I hit that 163 yards, but it's saying I could only hit the ball 2 more yards anyway. Now that measurement is taken from the world's best players. For every TrackMan owned, that's that orange box down there, all the data gets sent every day to the head office in Denmark, and all those numbers are crunched from Tiger Woods, from Dustin Johnson, from any player you want to mention. All those numbers are crunched, and they work out exactly what each mile an hour is capable of. Now, that swing I've just hit there, by closing the face, I optimized the amount of distance I could hit the ball. It's saying there's no more distance in the tank. So that's at 85 miles an hour, 84.7. I'm going to swing at a similar swing speed now, and I'm going to intentionally not shut the door. So remember, today's lesson is about shutting the door. If I leave my club face open and swing at a similar speed, let's look at the impact of that. Great. 30-yard loss. 30-yard loss on a 6-9. So I try to swing at similar distance. 83.9, so within half a mile an hour. I hit the ball 139 yards. And what the optimizer is saying to me is that I lost 30 yards of distance there because my club face there was 7.6 degrees open. So if you think I was 3.1 degrees closed when I optimized my distance, left that club face there open by 7.6, and that's given me a 30-yard difference. So simple maths there. I'm not sure if this works out all the time. A 10-degree difference in my club face angle there has given me a 30-yard loss on a 6-9. And of course, an open face having a massive slice short of target here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and corrupt the club face even more. Swinging at the same speed. Now, unfortunately, for one of you who's watching today, my old mate Ian Chapman, Ian's very unusual in as much that he closes his club face way too much. This lesson today, Ian, is not quite as relevant for you, what we're talking about now in terms of shutting the door. You and I are trying to keep the door square. We're not trying to close it because you have an incredible ability to hook the ball over to the right, which honestly, if 90% of golfers could do that, they'd be much happier. So if I try and corrupt everything now, swing at the same speed, I'm going to try and swing again at 84 miles an hour, that sort of range. I want to aim right at target and close that face off. Now look at it. Oops, let me do one more. There we go. Alrighty. So I hooked it. Over here it's left of target, 84 miles an hour, and I hit it a total of 176 yards. Now if I just go back to my, what's it up here? You can see here in the swings that I've shown you, ignore that one there because that's when I was warming up. 139 yards when I sliced it, 176 yards when I don't slice it, when I hook that ball left. So the longest shots I've hit today, when I close that face over, I've hit the ball 164 yards, and that's the optimum distance I can carry it in the air. Total distance there, 176. Now, what I did to achieve that was I aimed way right of target by withdrawing that right foot, and that gives my body lots of range and motion. In the swing itself, I set up with my glove hand. I left my glove in the shop today, unfortunately. I set my glove hand over the handle like this. There's a big key for all of you, apart from you, Ian. If the glove hand comes over here like this, what does that do? It tilts me back this way. Again, it helps me in this position here. And then from there, I'm thinking of swinging and squaring up or closing that face, shutting the door. So really, when you think about the golf swing, we're not aligned to our target now. We've come back a little quarter distance here, a little quarter turn back here. And what you're trying to do all the time is get yourself to do that into the back of the ball. I assure you, you don't need much of a follow through from there. If your follow through is a bit limited anyway, it doesn't matter. But if you swing from here to here, you optimize the power I've just shown you that you strike on that golf ball. Now, the other thing as well is if we do swing from this path here, we actually create lots of space to swing into anyway. So it's fine to stand a little bit closed or withdraw the right foot, because it creates a bit of space out there to swing into. So again, for Michael Wright, who's always talked about his short and follow through, I like it, Michael, because you've got a nice good snap in the ball. It's that hockey strike into the back of the ball, and all your energy takes place into and at the ball. Don't fuss too much about having a long follow through. Alrighty, so I think that there are four main areas where a distance loss occurs for senior golfers. The first is lack of body motion. Well, people say, oh, I can't turn as much anymore. Well, we've addressed that today. If we pull that right side back a little bit, we're already presetting a little bit of body motion anyway for you. And like I say, if Gary Player does it, Arnold Palmer did it, Sam Snead did it, then the precedents are there. The second thing is stiffness, just as you stiffen up a little bit. That's Father Time. We can't do much about that unless you're going to do your, cod liver oil tablets, all that sort of stuff. But where we don't want stiffness is in the hands. Now, remember what I said to you last time? That's called a handle. We place our hands on the handle in a position where we hold the golf club. And if we hold it, it will swing loosely. And we want that looseness in the swing. Remember I talked last time about how Tom Watson set about the changes in his swing. And I talked about how he'd softened his arm. So if we look here, here's Watson at the top of the swing there. And look at his glove arm, the difference in the positions of his glove arm. So as a young man in a red shirt at the top there, glove arms are very straight. When he was 60, he nearly won the Open. On this pitching down here, he softened his left arm, his glove arm, because he wants a bit more movement in it. So tension or grit, stiffness is a killer. And if you are naturally stiffening, do something about it. Hold that club a bit lighter and get some range of motion in there. So as you swing the club back, that is no disaster at all. So if you look at the length of the distance my club's gone on there, if I straighten my arm, I've taken a good 3 or 4 foot of range out of my swing or length out of my swing. And if we get that club going back an awfully long way, we create lots of power in the swing. Because the longer that club goes back, within reason, the more smack, the more shape, the more width we have to the swing. So softness in the hands. Remember, it's a handle and we hold the handle. Loss of strength is another one. We just physically lose our strength. We see it with Gary Player. If it happens to him, it happens to everybody. If you can, keep the club moving during the lockdown period. There's every chance we're going to be playing golf at the end of this month. So you don't be coming back with that much strength in your hands. Get some range in there. And get some exercises up. Get swinging in. If you have a garden you can swing into, then do that. If you don't have a garden, you're living in a flat, just look in the mirror and try and get some range exercises whereby you swing around the body. Get the club moving or get your arms moving around your body. Because if you lose range, the amount of space you've got in the swing, your swings get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then it becomes harder and harder. And then injury, operations, and wear and tear. Now, very interestingly, I do a lot of work with disabled soldiers, as many of you have supported the charity, the On Course Foundation, over the years. And I do a lot of lessons for them in the lockdown. I have been doing lessons for them in the lockdown period. And what I've been doing with them, I've been showing them, because I'm doing some stuff now for complete beginners, is I'm saying to them, look, if you do lose an arm or you lose use of an arm or a leg, it's not a disaster in this game, because we can still create lots of power. So when I'm dealing with the soldiers, sailors, and Air Force personnel, and they're missing limbs, be it legs, arms, and what have you, you don't lose as much power. Well, one doesn't lose as much power as one thinks. So the whole point about this is, if I have a serviceman who's lost their left arm, it's fine, because all I do with them is I withdraw that right foot, open or close the body up to this position here, and get them to swing the club up here with that right arm, and you can see there's an awful lot of swing there. So they can get some motion in that right arm. Now, I hit that one there 140 yards. Now, that's not bad distance for a 6-iron. Now, the whole point of what I'm saying there is that when we coach the servicemen, we have to find different ways and quirky ways of doing it. I taught 2 servicemen in wheelchairs. We get them to stand to the side and swing around the wheelchair there. There's a way of doing this all the time. Now, if you do have injury or wear and tear on parts of your body, use that part of the body less. And it's a really key point, this, because every part of the body moves in a golf swing. You know, all limbs move. We get lots of range of motion around the body. Therefore, if you are suffering with an injury somewhere, take the pressure off it. If it's a hip injury, then what I would do with you is either narrow the stance, which is always a good thing to do, I know, to generate more distance, or withdraw the foot where the hip injury is. Now, again, we're getting sort of personalization there. The general message, though, is to narrow the stance a little bit, and that will give you range. Now, Brian O'Boyle watching today, we've talked an awful lot in the past about Brian's knee not sliding out over here. And over the course of the past few weeks, we've discovered the best way for him to do that now is to pull that right side back. It's giving him much more range in the swing. And we did a video lesson the other day. It looked fantastic. So, if we look at the stiffness element of the golf swing, it starts in your hands here. And that's a killer, because it will shorten the swing. Remember the Gary Player picture? He was getting up to about here, even with a bit of bend in his arm. Let me just show you that picture again. You can see there, as he shortened his swing, there is a bit of bend in that left arm, that glove arm. So, if you're suffering with a bit of stiffness, do not fuss about bending that glove arm a good 90 degrees. It creates so much leverage on the way down to the ball. And if you're somebody who's thinking, well, I've got to try and keep that left arm stiff, forget about it. It's not the time to do it. I can hit the ball perfectly well by bouncing the club on my shoulder here. And that engages my hands and my elbow into a real whipping position. Now, again, I've hit that ball 143 yards there. Plenty of club head speed. It's 79 miles an hour club head speed. That's fine. And I really bent my arm. Now, if I show that again, you'll see, as I swing up here, an indication of a bent left arm is the space between my hands and my shoulder. Now, what I've done there is I've got my arm bent on my shoulder here, and I've got loads of whip in my hands because I've softened the handle. So I still managed to swing at 81 miles an hour. Still got 150 yards of speed out of it. Club face very, very square. Again, I'm trying to shut that door all the time. So there's another example there of exercises you can do at home. You just, when you're looking in the mirror, do that. And I've watched Jack Nicklaus do this. Jack Nicklaus takes out 2 or 3 clubs, and he swings the club up, and he bounces off his shoulder here, and he swings through and bounces off his shoulder here. I saw him do that in 1988 at the Open with him. Swing up, he bounced the club on his shoulder here, and bounced the club on his shoulder here. He was trying to generate softness and looseness in the swing, because again, as he aged, Jack used to have this big, high, stiff swing position up here. As he aged, his swing got shorter and shorter, and he softened that arm a little bit. It's such a big key. Okay. Now, do you have any questions whilst I'm talking to you about anything that we're talking about here? So I'm going to show you another one of my favourite exercises for you. And that's to turn the club upside down to create some swish. If you do have a garden, have the club upside down, loose on the way back, and then swish. Really get that swish action going. Now the swish does two things. One, it uses these levers, 1, 2, 3, here, that whipping action. And the second thing it does, it gets my right hand crossing over like this. This is such a big key in terms of shutting the door. What club head speed should us oldies achieve? Well, I would say if you're in the 70s as a club head speed and you close the club face, you will optimize an awful lot of distance. So just to give you an example there, let me have a look here. Now I would say, Michael, I'd be surprised if your club head swing speed is lower than 80, having seen you hit the ball. But I'm going to make a couple of swings now. Okay, so that's a good example there. Nice question here. So I swung there slowly at 80 miles an hour. Remember, I swung my 6 iron at similar speed, and I hit the ball 200 yards. Now, the average distance for a male golfer who's an 18 handicap playing twice a week is 190 yards of total distance. Now, that swing speed of 80, most of you watching, I'd be surprised if it's less than 80. 200 yards. Now, the optimizer tells us even if Tiger Woods swung his driver at 200 yards, he would only hit the ball 209 yards. So what I'm trying to do all the time there is trying to swing the club in a manner which optimizes that speed. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try and close that face quite a bit more now. Not my best. Okay, so that one there, swung a bit faster at 84 miles an hour, but I only achieved another 4 yards of distance, or 3 yards of distance. So club head speed isn't the be all and end all, it's ball speed that's the be all and end all. So if we look at how we create body speed with the body and the swishing action, it's ball speed that really matters. Because if I strike the ball squarely, the ball flies off quickly. If I strike it from the sweet spot, it flies off the optimum speed. Anything where the club face is open, you don't shut the face like this, you will lose a tremendous amount of ball speed. And that's why sometimes we feel like we're swinging aggressively and the ball's flying like a dying bird because we're not squaring that club face into the strike. How do you convert a hook into a draw? Well, it's all down to club face. In your case here, I've got a lefty there. Your hook is doing that way too much. And like I say, we spend 90% of our time trying to get people to actually square the club face in. And so in your case here, we've opened the face on the way back and tried to limit how much that club face flips over here. Alrighty. So by doing that, when we swing your club more upright here, when we swing the club into a more upright position here, that stops the club from swinging around and then spinning the ball way over to the right because you're a lefty. All right, so let me go back to the Tom Watson positions now because they were really interesting last week. So again, there's Tom Watson as a young man. In a very upright position. His hands are so high above his head there. Big, big position there. And here he is in his 60s. He's softened his elbow dramatically. That's a big difference there. And even from that peculiar camera angle there, we can see his club shaft is way beyond the horizontal. So what Tom Watson did throughout his career was to try and create and keep the length of his swing. You see, as he addresses the ball, first of all, the stance is significantly narrower. So what he's doing there is giving himself more chance to get mobility in the swing. The stance has two functions. One is stability, and the second is mobility. The wider we stand, the more stable it might feel, but it limits mobility. Now, because when he was young, he knew that a wide stance would give him a bigger swing. He didn't care about losing a bit of mobility because his body was so lithe and he was so stretchy that he could do those two things to optimize distance. As he aged, you see it set up there, he definitely narrowed that stance quite a bit. And the big position for all of you at home today is that one there at the top of the swing. Look at the difference between the hands relative to the top of his head on both those far right positions. Massive, massive height there. Lots of gap between his hands and his head. That tells you leaves as wide as possible. But as he got older, his swing didn't change much in swing length. He's gone past horizontal on both of those. But on that position there, you can see a significant bend in his left arm. Now, a picture I want to find for it. Let me just dig it out for you. One of my favourites. Again, this is Tom Watson here. Look how long that swing is there. And look at the bend in that glove arm there. Club's gone right over. And because he swings so quickly, you don't always see just how long his swing is. But in that position there, you see a huge amount of swing length because he's bent his arms there. So he's trying to keep himself mobile all the time. And one final picture for you here. There's Bernhard Langer, who in the modern games probably had the longest stretch of high-level golf. He's 63 now. But look at his visor. That tells you so much there. And that was a shot he hit. It wasn't a rehearsal swing there. Look at that visor motion. There's no way his visor started that far angled away from the ball. But you can see it's made a huge move during the swing. So let's have a look at why he does that. Again, we're trying to create as much range and space and power on the way back as we can. What Langer does is his head tilts that way, it sends his spine that way, and of course, he's created that space. It's given him even more room. Remember, Jack Nicklaus and Nick Faldo both set up to the ball, and the first thing they did before they took the club back was that they both tilted their head that way to free up the neck and the shoulders to create space. So what the good players are doing all the time, even when they're young, they're trying to create as much range on the way back as possible to create all the power. There's loads and loads of different ways of fighting Father Time. Alrighty, any more questions about what we've talked about? Anything you'd like to add or want me to talk about in particular about what we've talked about today, or any other questions on the swing itself? I'll hit a couple of shots while you're doing that. What I'm doing now, I'm going to purposely hit some big high hooks. I'm going to try and squeeze it. I hit the one 191 yards. I don't hit my 691 yards. What I'm doing here now is hitting a big high hook by aiming right at target. What I'm asking you to do. Great, that's what I wanted to do. All right. That's what I was trying to show you earlier on, actually. So, I swung faster there, definitely created some power. I hit that 6 line there, 198 yards. I'd never do that on a golf course. It's an uncontrollable distance for me. Now, what I did there, I hit an enormous Yahoo hook. I mean, that's a straight line there. I had an enormous Yahoo hook here. Club face angle was closed by 1.5 degrees. I hit a modest 149 feet off target. A solid 50-yard hook for you there. But this is the interesting part. Remember what the optimizer does? It tells you what the maximum amount of distance achievable is per mile an hour swung. Now, on this shot here, I carried that ball 188 yards, but the computer's telling me, hang on a minute, the optimum distance is 186. Now, I hit it 188, so I'm actually outperforming in distance terms what the computer's saying is possible. So the point about that is a really valid point, this. Is if I outperform the club on distance terms only and sacrifice my accuracy, it tells us that by closing that face by 1.5 degrees, aiming way right at target to play a big old Yahoo hook, it's a 149-foot hook. Imagine what that looks like in the air. And that's traveling from all the way over the club. the right hand side of the golf course, the left hand side of the golf course. Now, because I aim so far right and close the face relative to where I'm aiming, I got a big high hook and I outperformed the miles per hour available. That tells you everything. So I swung there at 92 and I achieved 198. So 92 club head speed, and I got 198 yards of total distance. Like I said, an uncontrollable 6-iron for me there. If I now swing even faster, I'm going to hit an open face. Let's see what happens. Now I thrashed it there. So I only swung a little bit faster actually, 92.3. But look at that, 164. The computer's telling me with that club head speed, I could have got 193. My face was open by 1.6 degrees there, so a 3-degree swing. I've lost 30 yards of distance. So in answer to your question, Michael, in fact, I can just do something else for you there, just to answer your question, Michael. You know, I talked about ball speed earlier. So I swung that at 92. The previous shot I swung at 92.5. So I was within 0.2 of a mile an hour. It's nothing, right? My ball speed when I sliced the ball was 123.4. When I hooked the ball, it's 130. So it's a massive 6 miles an hour. Imagine that in the wind. Now, you know, when we talk about, it's a 2-club wind or a 20 mile an hour wind. If my ball's traveling 6 miles an hour faster, it really negates the power of the wind. And so a ball which is moving with a square face or even a closing face stays straighter for longer because the wind won't touch it anyway. So 6 miles an hour of extra ball speed there off a identical club head speed. So close the face is the answer, isn't it? Roll that right side, get yourself in a position here where you're back, and then come in and close that face. So those two things can be quite counterintuitive because we think all the time we're trying to point on target and swing on target. But it's better to do the Gary Player position. Have the feet withdrawn this way, swing this way, but then make sure you swing and close the club face relative to your target. You don't swing over there, the ball will fly over there. There's no point aiming over there. So you swing from here, but you definitely have the action of closing the club face. And that clapping exercise, I assure you, is one of my favourites. If you want to learn the golf swing, then just learn how to clap. Alrighty, any more questions from you? I hope you got something out of that session today. Like I say, I've used different reference points as well as the same reference points as last time. It's been a bit of noise interference from the wind. But hopefully you've got the message across again today. There's every chance we're back on the golf course the next 2 or 3 weeks, I would think. Which is the optimum ball for the lower club head speed? Well, I'd say the Titleist Velocity is a great ball. It has lots of, it gets very high very quickly. So when it says velocity, it was speed, but it gets very high very, very quickly. That's the ball I like. And really, the harder the ball, the better. If you want to generate more distance off the club face, that golf ball needs to be hard. If you hit a golf ball, it doesn't leave the face straight away. It goes into the face and then sort of springs off. So by the time you take a photograph of club face hitting the ball at impact, the ball looks like a poached egg and it springs off. The softer the ball is, the more it splats onto the club face and then comes off slower. The harder ball is, it jumps off much faster. So really the Titleist Velocity ball is probably my preferred ball for most amateur golfers. It's a fantastic ball. Alrighty, well, thanks ever so much for tuning in, all of you. It's nice to see you all. What's the date today? It's the 5th or the 6th, isn't it? It's the 6th of May now. You never know. We might be together again next 3 or 4 weeks. In the meantime, I hope you keep fit and healthy, stay in touch with each other, and get yourself swinging at home. Swinging in front of the mirror is a fantastic way of keeping your golf motion going. Just get the range in your body. You put something in your hands, a ball or a book even, and just get that motion around the body. Alrighty, well, thanks ever so much, and I look forward to seeing you all sometime soon. God bless.